All right, Chi, how you doing today?
Hi, Cyrus. How are you?
Excellent, my friend. Okay. So today I just want to talk a little bit about the creation of Captain China, the character.
Sure.
So I guess my first question is what kind of archetype did you sort of model him after?
Well, it was interesting because when I first started, I went from perspective of looking at what is it that the China would be interested in.
Sure.
The type of superhero. Now, China, you really have to understand where they come from historically. They were a country that were kind of taken over, and kind of being invaded, and kind of under political control for a long period of time. So there's always that sense of them wanting to be a very proud group of people.
Right, the Japanese you're talking about
specifically. Yeah, well, not just Japanese. Before that, the British Empire had colonization over there. French Empire had it there. Almost every country you can imagine were at one point or another, ruling China. So they want to be very powerful and strong. They want to show the world, that they are world power. That's really kind of what their political policies and direction has been heading for the past. I think ever since they opened their doors around the 90s, they were kind of moving in that direction. So you look at this stuff and go, okay, they want to show they're strong. They want to show their pride. Not to mention, a lot of their people came out of poverty only very recently, within the last 2 decades.
Sure.
They were very, very poor before. They had nothing. So you look at that kind of situation, politically, socially, you kind of go, give them a character that can fly around like Superman is too much for them to handle. They can't grasp something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little too far away from their social understanding what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Something like Batman, who is a millionaire that has all these gadgets, that has at disposal, also don't really fit with the majority of their people too.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah, technology really wasn't what they were really not that savvy with it. A lot of them didn't even have it. Like the way the rest of the world had it. So technology is not something they only gravitate toward in probably the last decade or so. But before that, people didn't even have a computer at their home.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah, so you have stuff like that you're looking at. So Superman is not good, Batman is not good. Wolverine, who is a savage wild animal, is not really their kind of forte too. They wouldn't gravitate toward that. But when I look at where the government is, where they still have military, marches every year, to celebrate their country's, birthday and all that kind of stuff, you really go, there's only one archetype that fits that mold, which is Captain China, which is Captain America.
Yeah.
Well, but there's only one type of mold that fits that, which is Captain America.
Right.
A soldier that kind of has pride, in what he does, militaristic, somewhat, even a bit, leaning on the patriotic side a little bit. So you go, okay, let's take that and work with that. And I kind of approached it from the angle of what would happen if they have something like a super soldier in China. Realistically, what would happen? And the idea really, you have to push it back to when America developed its atomic bomb. The rest of the world wants it.
Right.
They didn't wait until like 50 years later to say, hey, we want atomic energy. They all wanted it right away.
Makes sense.
So if you look at that idea and says, okay, if America do have something like Captain America or Super Soldier, the rest of the world will want it right away. So I tackled it from that angle, which is, okay, then they would want to have their own, superhuman military soldier right after World War II. It's when they was kind of coming into their own, that was kind of when they were kind of ruling themselves for the first time.
Makes sense. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the major differences, I guess, between Captain China and Captain America?
I think the major difference is the starting point of the character, where America, when you have something like Captain America, he was really like a propaganda tool that was selling patriotism for World War II.
Right.
We're going to war with Nazi Germany, and he was kind of leading people in that direction. China would use it differently, where it's almost a demonstration of where they are globally right now.
All right, demonstration of strength and power,
strength and
prestige.
Power. Yep, and all that. They want to be like us. That's why they would create something like that. That's kind of how I tackled it, and it makes sense to me to look at it from that angle. And I think it would make something that they can gravitate to as a mainstream conscious and audience over there.
Makes sense. What about temperament and just general idea mentally from where Captain America and Captain China are? How do they differ?
I think they differ mainly because of the story backdrop setting. Where Captain America has always been a symbol of freedom, of doing the right thing. Kind of like truth, justice, the American way.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But you look at China, they don't really have this type of ideal. What's kind of ingrained in their society ever since the communist takeover is the phrase "to serve the people."
Makes sense.
Because it's communist country, so everyone is kind of equal. We want to serve the people. That's kind of the ideal that's been more like the way I tackle Captain China.
How does Captain China relate himself to his arch nemesis, or the people that he's always opposed to?
Well, first of all, I make sure they're all Chinese.
Yes.
He's not fighting any foreign powers, because I think that's more respectful, to creating the character and to his audience. I think it's very strange to if I created Captain China just so he's fighting Americans or British people. That doesn't make any sense to me, because they're a country that's kind of going through their own struggles and growing pains, right now. It's almost a representation of, if you have power, but at the same time, the powers can be used for the right or for the wrong. Right. To serve the people or not to serve the people is kind of how I approach that with his villains.
Absolutely. So, what are some of the different things that you outfitted Captain China with? And how does that sort of represent the larger context of the story?
Well, Captain China is outfitted with a gun.
Right.
He carries a pistol. Part of it is because, like I said earlier, it's the military aspect. China over there. They still have military marches. They pride their army. They help out the Liberation Army a lot. So I give him a pistol, which makes sense. Also, I didn't want to, go with the typical or the cliche, martial arts type of, idea where, every time you see a Chinese superhero created by an American, he's carrying a sword, he knows Kung Fu. I strip all that away because you go to China, not that many people really knows Kung Fu, and people don't really own a sword.
Sure, but there is a character that does do Kung Fu, and that's a major contention for him.
Yes, because it creates sort of the old and the new. The Captain China who carries a gun, who don't know Kung Fu, and then one of his opponent is a traditional Chinese martial artist that do use his blades and stuff like that. But this is to create a sort of just a visual contrast and even a sort of a ideal conflict with the characters.
Captain China, all 12 volumes are right now on the site, right?
Yes.
And one of the excellent things about it in the first volume is that you get a great opportunity to introduce himself as a character. You see sort of his temperament from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. You see sort of how he relates to the modern world that he's in.
Yes.
And how he interacts with it very differently than Captain America would.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, you get a chance to be able to see one of his major antagonists very early in the story. And I think that's a pretty excellent first book. But you can see how he relates to everyone a little bit differently throughout the 12 chapters.
Yes, the characters' relations are, changing and evolving. There are people that bonds, with each other, and then there's even betrayals that happen. But I think that's just what makes a great comic book.
Right. So at the end of the day, Li Fang, I feel, is a pretty well thought out character. We're not talking about everything because we definitely want you guys to be able to go in and read the book.
Sure.
And there's a lot that we haven't talked about. It's pretty exciting, but it's a good starting point.
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you guys want to go ahead and take the opportunity to read Captain China, starting at volume 1, you can go to brushpix.com or go to the link down in the bottom in the description below and start reading. It's for free, and you can get the opportunity to read any and all of it as much as you want. So definitely go and check that out.
Yeah, really hope you enjoy the book.
Alrighty. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. See you guys next time.